Hey, good morning, Rick. And oh my goodness, you've sure helped my life 7 years ago when I started using what we call today Cell Defender. And I've been using it every day since then. And all of the products, I love them and excited about trying the new vanilla. And just
Yeah.
for people that maybe this is their first exposure to you, maybe talk a little bit about you and the best lab you've ever worked in, which is yours right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. For people who don't know me, I'm Rik Deitsch. I'm a biochemist. I like to tell people I'm different in the field because I'm both a nutritional biochemist and a pharmaceutical biochemist. So my work in college and graduate school was all in drug discovery. I worked primarily in drugs for the treatment of cancer. I worked with the Duke University Comprehensive Cancer Center. And I worked on something called camptothecin analogs. These were the class of drugs are topoisomerase 1 inhibitors, but it was camptothecin is a natural product, comes from a bush, a little tree called the happy tree, the zishu. And camptothecin, when it was first being tested in rats, worked great. And my joke, my story is, you give me a rat with cancer, I can cure it. But when we gave it to people, it killed the people. And so we had to figure out what was different between humans and rats. And there's a lot of stuff that's different between humans and rats. And then we tweaked the drug to make it usable in humans. And so those drugs were, if ever anyone's ever heard of irinotecan or topotecan, that came from that research, camptothecin analogs. But then in college, I started working with something called cone snails. Cone snails are venomous snails in the ocean. And it's cool. The snail sits in the bottom of the ocean, sticks out its tongue, and it looks like a worm. So when a fish comes to eat the worm, it stabs it, injects a venomous cocktail, and paralyzes the fish and then eats the fish. So I studied that venom, and specifically, I studied a venom compound called alpha conotoxin, which is an acetylcholine inhibitor, and studied that for the treatment of pain. And I worked on the very first drug I worked on was called Prealt for the treatment of pain. It's used in intrathecal pumps where people have these inserted pumps that go right into their spine, and normally it's full of morphine. And we replaced the morphine with alpha conotoxin, which is non-addictive, non-opiate, non-narcotic. It doesn't have the side effects of the opiates. So that drug is actually available today. That was the first drug I ever worked on. It's called Prealt. Prialt. But then I worked with Gila Monster Venom and I worked with MLM Pharmaceuticals. They made a drug called Exanatide, Exendin 4, which eventually became the diabetes drug Byetta. And now it's famous because it was the first GLP-1 drug before Ozempic or Wegovy. Wegovy was the first GLP-1 drug for diabetics. And it's an interesting story. It was scientists noted that when a Gila monster bit somebody and they passed out, the Gila monster bite is not considered fatal, but it's a painful bite. And the venom, people universally would faint, they pass out. And they found out that's because there were things in the venom that ate up all the blood sugar and there was extreme hypoglycemia. And they said, well, that might be good for diabetics. And that's where that drug came from. So it's just someone noticing things in nature and what it might be, if something in nature might be able to help someone in a disease state. So I did a lot of drug research. That cone snail research eventually led me to my cobra venom research, which we now use in Avini's Plus Relief products, cobra venom extracts for treatment of pain and inflammation. But I was in graduate school. I met the love of my life and we had to get married, and we didn't have to get married. Sorry. We fell in love and we got married. And she has expensive taste. So I had to get a job. So I started working for Rexall Sundown and became a nutritional biochemist. At the time, Rexall Sundown was the largest manufacturer of dietary supplements in the world. I got to work with some incredible people. At one point, we had 400 PhD researchers. And we did clinical research. We made dietary supplements and food products. We did great research on what it meant to be proactive for your health instead of just reactive to disease. It was complementary and alternative medicine. And that really elevated me in this field. I also, for the first time, got to work with network marketing. I had no real experience in network marketing, although my father, for a while, was a Melaleuca distributor in the 80s. But I worked for Rexall Showcase, which was a division of Rexall Sundown, and I got to do this, talking distributors, explaining how the products work. And I found out I was good at it and I really liked it. And so that became this kind of talent I had, making the products and explaining their use in network marketing. And I fell in love with the market. That led me to all the work I did in the Rexall products, and then eventually my work with zeolites. And I launched the very first colloidal suspension of zeolites back in 2004, which now is Cell Defender. So if you see any other company that has a zeolite product for a detox, they're knocking me off. I'm the category creator in zeolite detoxification. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, except I also am a voracious reader. You can see my home library here in home office. And I also play a bunch of instruments, but my guitar's over there.
You talked about how you're going to make only unique things. If you get it somewhere else, especially like a multivitamin or vitamin C or something like that. But a lot of us, we love protein shakes or meal
Yes.
replacement shakes. And these all, but you found something that's really unique, and not all shakes are created equal. And one of the things I do when I'm looking at a company, everybody has one because everybody loves them, is how you do one thing is how you do everything. And a lot of times, what I'll do to just check out a company is I'll read the label of their shake and think, oh, maybe that's not so exciting. But yours is good for label readers, and maybe you could go into depth why you went ahead and did that. And I'm so glad you did. And we're getting some amazing results with it. And also, I think everybody's curious because you talked about we can't do a vanilla shake because vanilla enhances everything, and we don't want to enhance all of the yucky stuff that might be making a high density nutrient content shake and then exaggerate all of those off flavors. Let's do all of that.
There's a lot of stuff to talk about. So first, understand the DNA of our company is detoxification. The zeolite is everything. We're the ones that have the micronized activated zeolite with all the clinical research, with all the testimonials, with all the great stories. And so everything starts with Cell Defender. But when you look at network marketing or even just in the world of dietary supplements, nothing attracts people more than weight loss and weight management. And really, because it's tangible. You know, I can tell you I'm taking all the mercury and lead out of your body. No one stops you in the street and says, wow, you have really low mercury levels. It's like they can't see that. But if you drop a few pounds, everyone goes, what are you doing? It attracts attention. And so we wanted to have a great concept in weight management. So we launched the TrimScience, and we do have the TrimScience products available in coffee, matcha tea, lemonade, and chocolate. And then to go with the TrimScience, we had the fiber, which helps give you a full feeling before meals, helps lower cholesterol, triglycerides, stabilize blood sugar. And then along with that, we recommend using the Cell Defender. That was our kind of TrimScience bundle. But we weren't getting the results. First of all, people aren't as compliant as we'd like them to be. So we have to talk about that. But we weren't getting the results we really wanted. And one of the things that's the easiest thing to do in weight management is calorie restriction, caloric restriction. So if you give someone a healthy meal that is less calories, then that's something that always works. And so that you see things out there like Ensure and those shakes, those meal shakes, but they're usually packed with sugar and a lot of bad ingredients. And so I said, let's make something that's high protein, anti-catabolic. And that's something, let me explain that. When you are on a diet and you're losing weight, the body loves to degrade. Muscle has a lot of energy in it. So it's not necessarily that if you just eat less, you're going to burn fat. You also lose lean muscle mass. And that's important to protect because if you look at the way your body uses calories, that's called your basal metabolic rate, your BMR. Your basal metabolic rate is what your body has to, the energy your body needs to function, to think, to digest, to your heart to beat, your digestive system to work, your lungs to breathe, just to function. You have a basic metabolic rate of use of energy. That rate is set by the lean to fat ratio, how much lean muscle you have to how much fat you have. So the more lean muscle you have, the more energy your body will use all the time. So if you lose lean muscle mass while you're dieting, over time, your basal metabolic rate goes down, which means you burn less calories over time, which means it's easier to get fat for your food to turn into fat. And so that's why yo-yo diets, you lose a bunch of weight, then you gain a bunch of weight back. And every time you do, it becomes harder and harder to lose weight because that lean to fat ratio goes down. So when you're dieting and when you're certainly trying to lose weight, you want to protect that lean muscle mass. And that breaking down things in the body is called catabolism. Building things up in the body is called anabolism. So that's why if you remember anabolic steroids, that's what they meant. They were hormones that would force you to make muscle. That's anabolism. So what we're talking about now is not anabolism. We're talking about anti-catabolism, anti-catabolic. We're going to prevent your body from breaking down your muscles. And there's ways to do that, especially when you take proteins and you have branched chain amino acids, BCAAs. BCAAs are naturally anti-catabolic. And so we said, not only do we have proteins, We need proteins that are going to be used for making and preserving lean muscle mass, and a blend that's going to be anticatabolic. And so that went into the work we did to create the TrimScience replacement protein shake. This is the chocolate. I actually don't have the vanilla here. I forgot to bring one home with me. But so I wanted to expand the TrimScience line. So the last summit we launched the meal replacement, and I made a chocolate. And let's go back into the world of formulation. It's pretty easy to make a capsule, a tablet, something you just swallow. Once you add color, taste, smell, and mouthfeel, that's what those are called organoleptic properties. When you hear, see, taste, smell, anything that affects your senses, then you have a problem. You have to make it smell good, taste good. It's got to feel good in your mouth when you're drinking it, so it doesn't feel slimy or too liquidy. So all those are, and even the color, all of that goes into making these products, and it adds levels and levels of complexity to formulation. When you have to make it, the color, taste, smell, and mouthfeel, you have to make that good too. Otherwise, you just put it in a capsule and you swallow the capsule, you go like this. You don't have to worry about it. When you're using proteins, especially whey protein, comes from dairy. By definition, it smells like sour milk, and it has that kind of sour milk taste because it comes from dairy. So that's, you got to overcome that. When we made the formulation, I said, this is our opportunity. I never wanted to launch a multivitamin. I always want to be unique, but it's an opportunity to make it a daily multivitamin. So I threw in a vitamin mineral blend. So you had all your vitamins and minerals in this meal replacement. But those minerals have a metallic taste. By definition, they're metal. And so you have a kind of bitter metallic taste. And so you have the sour milk and the metallic taste. And how do you cover that up? So some flavors are natural maskers. Chocolate is a natural masker. So you can put chocolate on something, it covers up a lot. And chocolate was the easiest one to do. It was still complicated. I had to work with a big flavor house to work on tweaking it. But I think we came up with a delicious chocolate flavor.
Amazing.
Everyone wanted something else. They wanted vanilla. I said, vanilla's too hard. And I'll tell you my vanilla story in a second. So I was trying to do strawberry. I couldn't do strawberry. We could not make the strawberry work in any way, shape, or form. I had some of the best chemists in the country working on this, and I couldn't get it to taste good. Not good enough for us. But I'm going to tell a story. In 1999, when I was at Rexall, we launched a product called NutriKid School Aid. Instead of Kool-Aid, we called it School Aid, which I thought was brilliant. And it was the first breakfast drink, breakfast meal replacement that had fatty acids in it, DHA and AA, which help make it helps produce the myelin sheaths around the nerves. So it makes for better nervous transmission, especially in children. So it makes kids smarter. And now if you look at even Carnation Instant Breakfast, all of them have that in it now. But in 1999, they did not. We were the first ones doing this. And we thought we were geniuses. All right. The right fatty acids in a kid's drink, and your kids are going to be smarter. Right. So the problem is fatty acids come from fish oil. Now, at the time, we actually used algae oil for Martech Biosciences, but it was still fish oil. And fish oil smells like fish and tastes like fish because it's fish oil. So all the management, all the marketing department, they wanted vanilla because vanilla is a good base, and you can add fruiters to it. You can add other flavors to it. I argue that vanilla was a flavor enhancer. So I made a great Dutch chocolate drink. It was delicious. The kids loved it. We focus tested it. It was perfect. They said no. I said, chocolate's a good masker. It's covering the flavor. They wanted vanilla. So they made a vanilla. It was terrible. They tested it with the distributors. I always argue you can't really test a product. You can't trust your distributors to give you good feedback because they just want the product. They want a product that they can sell. They want a product they can give out. In this case, we sent out to 5 or 6 of the top distributors, and I don't even think they tried it. They said, when can we get it? When can we get it? And so they launched the product. And like I said, chocolate is a flavor masker. Vanilla is a flavor enhancer. So if you have something that tastes like fish and you have vanilla to it, it tastes like vanilla fish. So it was terrible. It was the worst product launch in my lifetime, in my history. And everybody sent it back. Everyone said, some people said maybe their kid's sick, they couldn't eat it, their kids refused to take it. It was the worst product launch ever. So that's my experience with vanilla, just so you know. So we tried strawberry and we couldn't make it work. And so they said, let's try vanilla. So I was actually surprised that even though vanilla is a flavor enhancer, in this case, I wasn't working with fish oil. I was really just trying to cover a metallic taste and a kind of sour, like dairy taste. And it got better and better. And then we just hit on this right. We used a form of debittered stevia, or what they call micronized debittered stevia, that had the right kind of masking sweetness that covered it perfectly. Have you tried the vanilla yet, Dave?
It's on order, but I'm waiting.
Okay.
Anxious.
I had some at the last meeting, the meeting in Nashville when we announced it. I think we blew it out of the water. I think it's absolutely delicious. And then Neil likes it too because he can have it just like itself, or he'll add something else, like his TrimScience chocolate or even TrimScience lemonade. It makes like a creamy lemonade. So or you can add fruit to it. So I think we really blew it out of the water. And so just to talk about what the product is, it's 22 grams of protein. It's, I'm sorry, 21 grams of protein, 22 vitamins and minerals that provide 100% of your RDAs for most of them, for 90% of your RDAs. So it really functions as a multivitamin, multi-mineral. So if we're taking Centrum one a day or something like that, this actually replaces it. And then MCT oil, mid-chain triglycerides, that's a mid-chain triglyceride, it's a mid-chain fatty acid that actually feeds energy to the brain, and it gives we used to think that the brain could only use glucose to function, but we found out that it can live on mid-chain triglycerides. So it reduces glucose in the body, helps stabilize blood sugar, and gives energy to the brain. So it gives you focus, clarity, and it acts in satiety as well when you're trying to diet. So it gives you a nice full feeling so you're not hungry. It takes away, sometimes they call it food noise, so it helps turn down the food noise that you don't want to get snacks all the time. So that's the mid-chain triglycerides. And then we put aminogen's been around for about 40 years. It's this fabulous enzyme that helps break down proteins and spare branched chain amino acids. So branched amino acids are just one of the amino acids or a group of amino acids that make all proteins. And it's in all the foods you eat. But those are the ones that are anti-catabolic, that preserve lean muscle mass. And so the aminogen, that particular enzyme protects those amino acids so you get better value from the protein. You get much more value from the protein. Additionally, a lot of people don't like taking protein shakes or protein bars because it causes stomach upset, it can cause constipation. There's nothing more scary for me than going to one of those big trade shows for bodybuilders. In fact, one of the biggest one is called the Arnold, for Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they sell all the protein shakes and all the protein bars. The men's room is a nightmare. It's horrible because everyone's eating all of that protein. And so it's a war zone in the men's room. So one of the things that helps that is aminogen, because aminogen helps break down that protein. So it takes away those digestive issues, that constipation, and preserves the brain chain amino acids. So adding the aminogen to this makes it really work. And of course, we also put our detoxolite. We put the cell defender micronized zeolite in this, which acts as a nutritional stabilizer, a nutritional shuttling agent. So it moves the nutrition around your body so it's more effective and you get more of it, and a nutritional enhancer. There were studies done. I talk about this. People say the zeolite removes toxins and heavy metals. Does it also remove good stuff like calcium, magnesium? And so there were these giant studies done in farm animals, goats, cows, and sheep. And they said, let's see how much the zeolite removes the good stuff as well. So they were convinced they were going to see lower nutrient ability for the animals, lower calcium, lower magnesium if they were using the zeolite. And they were surprised to find that the animals that were on the zeolite had higher nutritional status than the ones not on the zeolite. They said, how's this possible? Because the zeolite is removing toxins and heavy metals that compete for absorption with things like calcium, magnesium. So by removing those toxins, you get better value from your food. You're absorbing better nutrients from your food and even from your meal replacement for your protein drink. And so by adding the detoxolate, it becomes a nutritional enabler. You get more nutrition from everything you're eating and drinking. So that's the last bit of it. So I'm very proud of the meal replacement, and I'm really thrilled that we're able to make a delicious vanilla.
I've been involved with shakes and nutrition for quite a few years, and one of the things right at first, shakes were just ground up soybeans, I think, just soy.
Yeah.
And then also, I think something like 90% of soy is GMO, and a lot of people are concerned about that and
Yeah.
different things. The other thing is it seems like thyroids don't like soy. I've read a lot of things along that line. Also, whey protein. We are what we eat. We are what we eat eats. And a lot of these factory cows versus getting really good milk versus just the factory milk, you could taste the difference. And
Yeah.
could you go into some details on sourcing and if we should be concerned about soy as far as the phytoestrogens and goiters and just things with
Yeah.
thyroids and
Well, that's a lot to unpack when it comes to thyroid health. In fact, that's one of my soapbox issues where I can get up and talk for 2 hours. But let's just go back to our sourcing. We are a fully registered, run CGMP facility. That's current good manufacturing practices. I was talking about this before you started recording. That the level of our registration, level of our commitment and compliance is such that we're under Code of Federal Regulations 111 and 211. So 111 is food and dietary supplements, 211 is pharmaceutical drugs. So we're actually registered and have the high enough quality to actually make pharmaceutical drugs in our facility. And we do make the Plus Relief, which even though it's homeopathic, is considered a drug. So it's under CFR 211. And so that's important to know that we're of that high quality. And all of our raw materials are tested and compliant for our quality review. That means non-GMO, organic. We source only from US suppliers. It doesn't mean that some of our raw materials don't come from other countries. There's some raw materials that you can't get in the United States, but we only use US suppliers that bring it in, make sure it's tested and validated, and they've validated their foreign sources. So we only use US suppliers for all of our raw materials. But you're right, you are what you eat. And if you get the cheapest protein, you're going to get the cheapest value for that. So we make sure that everything is non-GMO, is certified organic, as we know exactly where it comes from. And now, when you talk about soy, this is soy protein. It's just the proteins. Okay, so it's an extract of soy. That's the protein extract. It doesn't have the isoflavones in it, the genistein and diadzine, although I could argue that those are very healthy compounds. I think one of the problems is that years ago, they called those compounds phytoestrogens. And it scared everyone because there are women with breast cancer. Oh, I can't have estrogen. I said, it's not estrogen, they're phytoestrogens. They actually balance the estrogen receptor, they don't turn it on. So, soy is actually very healthy for women that are at risk for breast cancer. In fact, in societies that eat a high soy diet, they have the lowest risk of breast, ovarian, uterine, and cervical cancer. Additionally, you go to a place like Singapore and Hong Kong where they eat soy every day, they don't have menopausal symptoms. There's no word in China for hot flash. It's like they don't have that in any society that eats a high soy diet because it helps balance those estrogen receptors. Much more dangerous would be plastics that have xenoestrogens because they do function like estrogens. So when you heat up plastic, it produces xenoestrogens. And of course, if you have any worry about any of that stuff, you should be on our Plus Balance because our Plus Balance balances all those hormones in the body and allows the liver to get rid of things like xenoestrogens and excess hormones. So that would help balance everything. I don't know if you want me to do a whole thyroid discussion because you talked about goiters and stuff like that, but
yeah,
that's
just
a
a little bit because everybody would find it interesting.
okay. So
We all love thyroid.
the thyroid is your body's clock. It actually it sets the metabolic rate of your body. And it's a little complicated, but the thyroid tells the body exactly how to metabolize everything. And it's in stages. So the first thing that happens is your adrenal glands create TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone goes to the thyroid. That makes the thyroid make a compound called T4. It's called T4 because there are four iodine atoms attached to the molecule. T4 then goes to the liver and is enzymatically converted to T3. One of the iodines is removed. That is the active thyroid hormone that sets your metabolic rate. So you need iodine to make T4 in the conversion of the liver to T3. The cofactor is selenium. Selenium converts T4 to T3. In many cases, a woman will come to me and she might be a little overweight, and her doctor told her she has a sluggish thyroid. There's no such thing as a sluggish thyroid. It's a ridiculous statement for a doctor to make. He just wants to say, okay, you have a slow metabolism. Let's give you Synthroid or L-thyroxine or Armour thyroid. The problem is once you're on one of those artificial thyroid hormones, you really can't get off it because the thyroid kind of turns off when you're giving your body those compounds. So I believe that Synthroid is the most overprescribed drug in the history of the world. Most people do not need it. They just need to improve their diet. Okay. So I'll look at someone's blood work and I'll see a high or high normal TSH, a high or high normal T4, and a low T3. Well, you need selenium to convert T4 to T3. That's a selenium deficiency. They need more selenium in their diet, fixes everything. If you see a low normal TSH, low normal T4, and a low normal T3, that's usually an iodine deficiency or a high TSH and low T4. So let's talk about that for a minute. Back in the 1930s, 1940s, a lot of people used to get goiters. They get a lump in their throat. That was thyroid insufficiency. That was an iodine deficiency. And so we started iodizing our salt. So all salt sold in the United States had iodine in it. You have the iodized kosher salt, Morton salt with iodine. Next thing you know, goiters disappeared because we're iodizing our salt. People are getting enough iodine. No one really got goiters anymore. Cut to the 80s and 90s, doctors started telling high blood pressure patients that they had to go on low salt diets. They said, oh, the salt is raising your blood pressure. And that's because it's true that sodium can raise your blood pressure if you don't have enough potassium to offset it. Because the way water moves in and out of our cells is called sodium potassium channels or sodium potassium pumps. And so as long as you have enough potassium, you can have enough sodium. You know, they balance each other. I tell people it's probably more important to increase your sodium than to increase your potassium than reduce your sodium. But here's the problem. You go on a low salt diet to reduce the sodium to try to control your blood pressure, and now you're not getting iodine because you're not having iodized salt. And so out of the blue, we're having all these people with thyroid insufficiencies and goiters again, and it's really the fault of low salt diets. So listen, if you want to go on a low salt diet, that's fine, but you need iodine. You got to get that iodine. And so there's plenty of products out there that have iodine in it. Kelp and bladderwrack, natural seaweed has iodine in it. And in fact, there's lots and lots of thyroid supplements on the market. If you look at what's in them, it's always an iodine source and a selenium source. That's basically it. Iodine and selenium to make T4 and then convert it to T3. So that's that statement. Now, when you have hormonal problems, you can have thyroid hormones have these issues that can go hand in hand with androgynous hormone problems like estrogen and testosterone. That goes back to the liver because one of the jobs of the liver is to balance all those hormones in the body. And that's where our plus balance comes in. Do I even have a plus balance? I have so much stuff in my office. So the plus balance aids in liver glucuronidation. And glucuronidation is the body's way of balancing hormones. If you have too much of a hormone, you're not making enough, it balances those levels. Now, the problem is there are things, especially toxins in the environment, that act like hormones. And I talked earlier about xenoestrogens. So if you heat up plastic, one of the compounds that can leach into the liquid that you drink acts like estrogen in the body. So we call them xenoestrogens and can greatly increase your risk for certain cancers, especially breast, ovarian, uterine, and cervical cancer in women. The way the body deals with that is glucuronidation in the liver, and the plus balance increases that capacity in the liver. So it's one of the things that plus balance does by making the liver healthier, improving glucuronidation and liver hormone balancing. It makes the body healthier, but it also helps with the liver function that creates hair, skin, nails, and even the walls of your blood vessels with type 1 and type 3 collagen. So one of the things in Plus Balance is not just a healthier liver and a better hormone balance, but healthier hair, skin, nails, and blood vessel, but with better circulation. So I know I took a dive and all over the place and I wound up on Plus Balance, but everything's connected.
And the aminogen, I guess it works better with the type of proteins that you've sourced with the shake versus, say, pea protein or something like that.
Yeah, aminogen is really formulated to work with whey protein. That's because whey, it's so funny how things change over time. Whey used to be literally thrown away. It was trash. It was like they would make all sorts of things, and the whey was left over from dairy production, and they would throw it away. But they found out it was very high in protein. So it was really the bodybuilding craze in the 80s that made whey protein such a thing. But whey protein was hard to digest. It gave a lot of issues. So that's where the research for aminogen came in, that it really helped you use something that was so functional as whey protein and help it work its best in the body.
No, fantastic. Also, just if you look at minerals, a lot of them are hard to absorb. And so ferrous oxide versus ferrous fumarate or different things like that. And I'm just looking at all your minerals. It's good quality compounds. In fact, a lot of the stuff in Avini is trademarked and really good stuff compared to other stuff out there. Like, as an example, the new cetyl myristoyate and
The
versus,
Celadrin, yeah.
yeah.
I'm the first one to say that brands aren't everything. Even in school, I didn't need to wear the brand jeans. I wore my Levi's. Not everyone's. When I was in school in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, it was all that was the craze of the designer jeans. I can't remember some of them, but if you remember, all the designer jeans came out. I just wore my Lees and Levi's. But things are branded for a reason. They're better. They're tested. They have the higher quality. So every once in a while, you will see that we will use a branded ingredient, like Celadrin for cetyl myristoyate. So I launched the first cetyl myristoyate product in network marketing back in, it was either 99 or 2000 with Rexall. We had a product called CMplex, and I did the original research for it and worked with the company that was making it. And we had such good results that within 2 years, there were probably 40 companies making cetyl myristoyate. And they made it from all sorts of different sources, and it wasn't standardized. And it's a fatty compound, it's a long chain fat that can degrade, it can rancidify. So if you don't really take care of it and standardize and protect it, you can have all these metabolites and breakdown products. And so you don't screw around with stuff like that. You try to get the ingredient that you know is made right, is standardized, and has all the research that goes behind it. So you will see in those instances, we will use a branded ingredient. I'll tell you, in some instances, I won't. There's a chromium, +3 chromium that's branded, and everyone says how great it is. It's +3 chromium. I can make +3 chromium in the lab all day long. I don't need to have a branded version of it. So there's, in some cases, I don't want to spend the money for a trademark, copywritten, branded ingredient that they're just because some big company wants to charge for it. And I know because I go to the trade shows, and me and Neil talk about this. Sometimes we'll go to a party that they have at the trade shows, and there's this one company, I'm not going to say who they are, but they always throw this one party, and there's lobster and filet mignon, and there's a live band, and all that's telling me is I'm paying too much for my ingredients. That's what it's telling me, because if they can afford to do all this, I'm paying too much for my ingredients. So do I necessarily need to have their branded ingredient, or can I save money for our distributors, the company, our distributors, by having something that I know is just as good? But when I know the branded ingredient is better, I definitely go with that branded ingredient.
And before we started the recording, we were talking a little bit about the concern that is in the news right now about a lot of protein shakes have lead. And you've got something right in your lab that can
Yeah.
help us. Maybe
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
You asked me how the lab was going because if anyone took our tour last year in our facility, we had one room that the previous tenants used as a conference room. It was 15 feet by 30 feet. It was a really big room. We didn't need a conference room. We just meet my office or Neil's office right in the middle. We call the bullpen. But what happened is, as we built out the offices and the production facility and the warehouse, that room turned into storage. We threw a lot of stuff in there, especially lab equipment and personal protection equipment and things like that. So we had this giant room just for storage. What was happening is that our liquid processing was getting bigger and bigger. We have 2 liquid lines. I'm adding a canning line to make cans of products in the liquid room. We're running out of room there and talking about it. And Neil came up with the idea of knocking down the wall between what was the conference room and the liquid room and expanding the liquid fill room. So we expanded that and added another 15 by 15 feet and then put a wall in. And the front half of what was the conference room, we turned into a laboratory. So we've epoxied it, put in clean room tiles, HEPA filters, and now I'm building out that laboratory. So it doubles our laboratory space, which we really needed. and allows me to have isolated microspace for microanalysis in the back of the first lab. So we're doing all that now, and we're talking about how that's coming. I'm putting new cabinets in, and my partner doesn't let me spend money on furniture. There's a fight back and forth about what's needed, what's necessary, and what's nice to have. So just know he's looking out for you because he wants to keep a strong, financially stable company for the distributors. So all that being said, we're talking about some of the equipment, and I have a particle size analyzer, so we're analyzing the particles of our zeolite and other people's zeolites. But I do have a Fourier transform fluorescing spectrophotometer that can really well measure heavy metals in all sorts of products. So when I saw this report came out, and you sent it to me, Dave, and a lot of people sent it to me, what's going on? It just came out this last week that showed high levels of lead and cadmium in a lot of popular meal replacements and protein drinks. And remember, the lead and cadmium, these are natural products. They exist in the world and they're out there. But depending on how you feed your animals, if you're getting your products from animals, or even how you control your field, if the products are coming from plants, those metals get taken up into the plants or taken up into the animals and can wind up in your products. Of course, we do quality control. We do C of A's in all of our raw materials. We test it ourselves to make sure that we don't have those levels in our products. But with this spectrophotometer, I can be measuring heavy metals. So that's one of the things we're going to do, not just with our products, but with a lot of the competitive products. So when people talk to us about it, we can say, this is our findings, that we see that these products from our competitors don't do the due diligence we do and the quality control that we do, and do have higher levels of things like heavy metals or volatile organic compounds or glyphosates or whatever other toxic compound we're finding in our food today.
That's fantastic. And the particle size, really anxious to see what our quote competitors have on the zeolite. So that'd be fun to have a chart with that we could look at.
Sometimes it's a moot point. We looked at another project. I don't even know if it's still in the market. It was their zeolite. They called it clear. They said it was so fine particles that the material's clear, you can't see it. We say it's clear because we couldn't find anything in it. We got a dozen bottles. I centrifuged it for like weeks and nothing came out. I couldn't find anything in this stuff. So I can't even do a particle size analysis when there's no particles because there's nothing in it.
The name was apropos.
Yeah, exactly. You can't disprove a negative.
There looks like there's a couple of Q&As if you want to.
Asking about what I could pull the article. Everyone's talking about the article. I've been sent it like a dozen times already. If you just go online and say protein drinks with lead in it.
I think everybody's dazzled. I don't see a lot of Q&A here today.
It was a Consumer Reports investigation, found high levels of lead, cadmium, arsenic in many protein powders. So here, let's see. Yeah, if you just do a search for Consumer Reports and protein, it'll come right up online. And they talk about some of the brands. Some of the people from those brands have already made their own comments about how they're improving quality control and whatever. But this was completely third party, just Consumer Reports going through and doing their own testing. Richard loves the vanilla shake. I got to tell you, I was surprised. I cannot believe they did that. The source for the D3, I don't even know that off the top of my head. I'm going to have to look at the quality, the C of A. There are several sources of D3. It's usually produced through fermentation. So I have to see exactly where that D3 comes from. A question I was from Plus Balance. Can we mix the vanilla shake with hot liquid? Yes, you can. Type 2 diabetic. Someone's asking type 2 diabetics. There's no sugar in the product. So it's sweetened with I said fractionally distilled stevia. So it's low glycemic. Diabetics can certainly use a meal replacement. Someone's asking if balance is similar to TUDCA. I know what that is.
Because a supplement.
Oh, yeah? I love when people throw stuff out like that, like everyone knows it. Urosodioxa, a naturally occurring bile acid fat? No. Okay, is a supplement. Oh, it is that. Yeah. So what is that? Aids in fat digestion, liver detoxification, supports healthy liver health. Yeah, I'd have to look in and see exactly what that does. It looks like it helps stabilize proteins in the liver, reducing stress in cells. But I'll have to look and see exactly what its function is. I do try to tell people that the Plus Balance is different than any other liver supplement. If I do my air quotes again, I don't want to overdo my air quotes. I think I did 10 times this talk. But when you talk about liver supplements, I've made many liver supplements. It's usually for liver structure. That's people that have fatty liver and things like this, or they have cirrhosis of the liver from alcoholism. And those compounds are always like silymarin from milk thistle, globe artichoke, things like that. Those are specific for liver structure. I was looking at liver function, and not just liver function, but specifically phase 2 transformation. One of the functions of the liver that could use a lot of help and is inhibited by toxicity. It's inhibited by things like xenoestrogen and microplastics. And the plus balance was, how can I improve type 2 stage 2 liver transformation, and the downstream effects of that are healthier hormone levels, and especially the production using biotin properly and collagen. We use a vegan collagen that produces healthier hair, skin, nails, and the walls of the blood vessels, so healthier blood vessels. So that was its point. I'll look at the TUDCA. Is that how you pronounce it? I'll look at the TUDCA and I'll see it's a bile acid derivative. It's probably better for things like fatty liver, which we're not really addressing, although the plus balance will help with fatty liver. It's not really its purpose. Okay. They got to thank you. Try the vanilla. My life loves the vanilla. So in his need of gaining weight would be a yeah. Listen, Shari, if someone wants to lose weight, then it's caloric restriction. So you have 190 calories in the chocolate. I think it's only 160 calories in the vanilla because the chocolate adds some calories to it. You have a full meal for less than 190 calories, and you have the means in the meal to utilize those calories. So it's a great meal replacement for people trying to lose weight. If you're not trying to lose weight, you can certainly add the healthy meal replacement to a meal if you wanted to, or have it as a between meal snack. And it's a nice, healthy, delicious shake. And it gives you all your vitamins and minerals. It gives you healthy protein. So certainly that's something you could add to your meals if you're not trying to lose weight. What sets it apart from all the other brand supplements in the market? That's a big question, but I'll tell you probably a million things. First of all, we care. We make our stuff with the highest quality that you can make it for the market. We do all of our own in-house testing. Everything you have is only touched by us. We bring in the raw materials, we make everything, we market everything, we distribute everything from ideation to pick, pack, and ship. And the formulations, you can't look at any of our formulations and find those on the market. And that's something I want to point out to everyone as our product philosophy. We don't want to make a product like people say, Rick, why don't you come out with a fish oil or a multivitamin or something like that? We never want to make a product that you go right to Walmart and buy. Even thyroid health. I didn't want to do a thyroid product because there are literally dozens and dozens of thyroid products. They're basically just iodine and selenium, and they're all over the place. So I would recommend, if you need a thyroid product, go to Amazon, go to Walmart, go to your grocery store, go to GNC, and there's plenty of thyroid products out there. So that's really what sets us apart. The other thing is our distributor force. We have a great distributor force that's sharing the information. They have thousands of their own testimonials on this. And I think we pay out a very fair commission as far as network marketing is concerned. So it's not just the great products, but it's a great opportunity for people to share the products with others and actually make a living doing it. Okay. Why can't we do the shake every day? You can do the shake every day. I guess the question is, why did I only put 20 servings in the canister and 15 servings in the packets? There's two reasons. First of all, many people who diet take the weekends off. And that's actually a good idea to have at least one, what we call cheat day. Don't go nuts, but it's good to shake up the metabolism a little. Most people don't diet every day. And it's also about the price. We need to keep the cost at a certain level so people could actually afford the product. And we made the decision to do 20 servings in the canister and 15 servings in the box of packets. But you can certainly use it every day if you want to. Someone's asking for a product that will help with Parkinson's. It's heartbreaking for me because one of my good friends died of Parkinson's last year. He was a Navy officer. He was an FBI agent. He was just a great guy, and he had early onset Parkinson's. Parkinson's is a tauopathy, and that's one of the things I haven't worked on in my life. I worked in Alzheimer's and Lewy body dementia, but I didn't specifically work in Parkinson's. And Parkinson's, the problem is it's a destruction of part of the brain, the substantia nigra. So the be-all, end-all for the treatment of Parkinson's will be stem cell research, where stem cells can be added to the brain to rebuild that part of the brain. That's what's going to happen to really deal with Parkinson's. In the meantime, it's mostly treated with exogenous dopamine to help with that signaling between the brain and the muscles. Believe it or not, neurotransmitter wise, we have seen some benefits in Parkinson's patients, first with the cell defender, okay, to just try to clear everything out to make the body work better, because a cleaner, healthier body fixes itself. And then with the plus relief, believe it or not, because the plus relief is neuromodulatory. By modulating signals to the nerves, it helps with pain and inflammation, but also helps with people that have nerve issues. In fact, the research that went into the plus relief was our original research on multiple sclerosis. We were working with MS patients and said, how can we improve neurotransmission in patients that are demyelinated, that aren't carrying a signal? And that led us to our drug. We have a drug for MS called RPI 78M, but it's also our over-the-counter product, which is the plus relief. And then lastly, for neurotransmission is the plus mind and vision. So for most Parkinson's patients, obviously I tell them to do what they have to do for the treatment. Eventually stem cell research will catch up. But for now, cell defender, plus relief, the oral spray, and the plus mind and vision. The vanilla flavor comes from vanilla. It is a natural vanilla extract from vanilla beans. In person with mild stevia allergy, consume the vanilla protein against. I've actually never met anyone with a stevia allergy. It's one of the things that I've not seen people have an allergic response to. Usually they're getting stomach cramps. Stomach cramps are not an allergy. It's what they call sensitivity, which means the an enzymatic loss, and probably the aminogen will help with that. So you can see, and if they're getting stomach cramps, find out if it's just the stevia or if it's something else, because most stomach issues, believe it or not, are caused by infection, especially Helicobacter pylori, H. pylori. So if that happens over and over again, they should go for an H. pylori test and treat that. In fact, for the longest time, we thought that ulcers were simply caused by acidic foods, and we found out that greater than 90% of all ulcers are caused by an H. pylori infection. So if you deal with the infection, you can deal with the ulcer issues. And can we combine the fiber with the meal replacement? Yes, you can. In fact, that's the first thing Neil did when we came up with the chocolate. We put the fiber in the chocolate, and it was an orange chocolate shake, and it was absolutely delicious. Who knew that orange and chocolate went together so well?
And some extra body too, which is satisfying.
Yeah. Is it possible to get AC numbers down, but always have high numbers? I think if you mean HbA1c, then absolutely. In fact, our plus fiber is clinically proven to lower HbA1c and stabilize blood sugar levels. And we talk about that when I talk about the plus fiber. By delaying gastric emptying, because the fiber will form a gel fiber matrix in the body when your food goes into it, it delays the absorption of your food. So your blood sugar never spikes. It comes up nice and smooth. It delays gastric emptying, so it controls blood sugar values over time and lowers HbA1c. What about all type of heavy metals and chocolate? Do you test ours? I just talked about that. Yes. So obviously we test our raw materials when they come in. We have a certificate of analysis, so we do our own testing, and we test our final product. So we haven't seen those issues. This is all new news about this Consumer Reports report that came out that all these other competitive products do have lead and cadmium and other heavy metals in their products. We do not. But as I set up my new lab in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start testing everything, not just our stuff, but everyone else's, because I get questions all the time where people say, I've used this product for years. Can you tell me what's in it? So it shouldn't take us long to be able to test other products just for our own edification, so we can test it and let people know what's in it. Well, you talk about the difference of sugar used in the TrimScience for diabetics. But we don't use sugar in it. For sweeteners, for the most part, we use debittered stevia, fractionated stevia, which is a natural plant. Stevia has compounds called stevia sides, which taste sweet to us, but they're 0 calories, 0 sugar. They're non-glycemic. So we use those. And then in the fiber, we use the monk fruit. And monk fruit is another plant extract. It comes from monk fruit, but it's a 0 calorie sweetener. The cool thing about monk fruit is it's 1,000 times sweeter than sugar. So you need very little of it to be sweet. The problem is it's very expensive. And so we only use a little bit. Okay. Recommendation with high eye pressure. Yeah, if you have glaucoma, obviously that's a very dangerous thing. You need to do something about it. Depending on the type, if you have bulging eye, that could be thyroid related. And we already had our thyroid lecture. If you actually have glaucoma, then there's a lot of things. In fact, it's one of the things that marijuana has long been prescribed for. But there's lots of causes of glaucoma, so you need to see what else is wrong with you that led to the increased eye pressure. Regardless, If you have any eye problems at all, I highly recommend the Plus Mind and Vision. There's components in there to help with cognitive function as well as visual acuity, and will help with things like circulation, things through the eye and the brain. Will our products interfere with RA treatments or injections? No, they will not. There's really nothing in our products that is contraindicated with pretty much any medication. I could look specifically if you tell me what drugs you're on and what our products are and tell you if there's an issue. The only caveat I always give for all of our products is that the TrimScience and the Energy Shot do contain caffeine. And caffeine is contraindicated with some medications and some protocols. So in every shot, every 2-ounce bottle of energy, there's 125 milligrams of caffeine, which is like a strong cup of coffee. And every dose of the TrimScience, there's 125 milligrams of caffeine. So understand that when you're using our products and other things. So Hannah wants me to share research. What time is it? I'm going to run out of time. Okay, I'll just do very briefly. So when I first started working with cone snail venom and then cobra venom, one of the longest term research on cobra venom extracts and specific drugs from cobra venom was in multiple sclerosis, and another one in Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. ALS was a 19-year IND. It's the longest investigation new drug application in FDA history, and I own all that data. And I'll tell you, so first with MS, we take a single peptide, alpha cobratoxin, and we modify it. It's a 78 amino acid peptide. We call it RPI 78M. 78 amino acids is modified. And it's an injectable drug for MS patients. Now, this is not Avini. This is my biotech company. It's a separate company. But we have done open label studies in over 300 MS patients. We have orphan designation from the FDA for pediatric MS. So orphan designation means that it's a disease that's suffered by fewer than 100,000 patients. The FDA will analyze your rationale, your protocols, the safety of your drug. And if they think it's safe for use and could be used in that indication, they designate you as an orphan drug. With that designation, it gives us waiver of fees, fast track, rolling review. It gives us a lot of benefits to go after this. Now, MS is a horrible disease. It's an autoimmune disease where your immune system attacks the myelin insulating sheath around the nerve, and so your nerves can no longer properly carry a signal. With our drug, we found that we can not only improve the signal over time, but we reduce inflammation, which causes the damage and side effects of MS. And we believe, but we have to prove in clinical studies, that we're slowly remyelinating the nerve. We're activating the MEL gene and remyelinating the nerve. All I know is that in our clinical research, in our open label studies, we've gotten over 300 patients out of wheelchairs. We're the first drug to ever reverse symptoms over time with MS patients. So now we need to prove it in controlled clinical studies. We are scheduling 2 phase 2 trials for next year. If everything works out and the funding comes through and people come through, we will complete that in the next year. And that can make a big difference in the lives of MS patients. Similarly, we looked at the data with Lou Gehrig's patients, the ALS patients, and they didn't improve on our MS drug. And that's because Lou Gehrig's disease is not demyelinating, it's not autoimmune. It's a free radical disease. It's caused by free radical damage where oxidative particles destroy the nerves. And so our patients on our MS drug said they felt better, but they didn't have objective improvement. So my feeling was we were improving nerve function, so they felt better, but we weren't an antioxidant. We weren't doing anything about the free radicals. So in explaining this, I said, why don't I just attach an antioxidant to our existing drug? So it's going to improve nerve function and deal with the free radical damage. And so that's what we're doing. We filed a provisional patent for a new drug to treat Lou Gehrig's disease. It should work. On paper, it works great. We're in the process of we need to make and validate the drug, and then we need to do the animal models for ALS, which we're hoping to do in the next 12 months. If we pass those animal models, then we can move into humans. It would be the first new concept of drugs for ALS ever. There was an ALS drug that was approved a year and a half ago that really doesn't work. It was approved against the wishes of the FDA because there was so much patient involvement and patient caretaker involvement. They said they need something. That particular drug had a lot of side effects and only increased the lifespan by about 30 days in the patients. So it's not a great drug. If our drug actually works the way I think it could work, it could be a game changer, make ALS patients healthier. It's not a cure, but it would allow them to live with the disease forever without the side effects and complications of the disease. So again, We haven't tested it yet. It's just an idea, but I think it's a great idea. And then you talk about Agent Orange. We talk about organophosphate poisoning. The same way our MS drug protects the nerves of MS patients, we believe it will protect the nerves of people that are affected by Agent Orange, sarin, ricin, these nerve agents. And so we've been working with the Department of Defense, but budgets are all over the place. So we got put on hold for now. But we're up for a contract using our drug as a nerve agent countermeasure to protect our soldiers against nerve agents like sarin gas and ricin gas and Novichok. So I believe we're going to be able to move back into that over the next 12 months once the dust settles and the government reopens. So I talked about ALS. Are you vegan, carnivorous, or both? I try to eat healthy. I don't want to get into too much of anything except the fact that I'm a scientist. I do believe in evolution. We do have teeth for meat and teeth for vegetables. And so I believe in eating meat and vegetables. There are things we get from meat that you can't get from vegetables. I try to eat a healthful diet, so I'm omnivorous. So no, I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian. I've heard mixed things and mixing protein with fiber, like fiber is just nutrient in their body. It's great. Yeah, okay. So listen, it's funny because I talk to nutritionists all the time that constantly tell me how to separate my food. And that's just it doesn't work like that. Things hit your stomach does acid hydrolysis. The job of the stomach is to break the bejesus out of your food. Just hit it, break it down with strong acid. Once that food is broken down, it moves in the intestinal tract where it's enzymatically degraded, where enzymes start to then break it down further into simple sugars, amino acids for absorption, and simple fats. Now, fats are preferentially absorbed. Fats are absorbed in the first 15 centimeters of your intestinal tract called your duodenum. So it's nasty that we absorb fat better than anything else. But that's, of course, also evolutionary because we had the least amount of fat of anything in our diet. We got less fat because we were mostly eating berries and things we could pick. We were hunter-gatherers. So fat was necessary to be absorbed. So we evolved to absorb fat better. Okay. But depending on what kind of fibers you eat or don't eat, or the fact is you can certainly have fiber with your protein. And if your digestive system is healthy, you're going to absorb everything just fine. You don't need to start mixing and matching and separating everything out from each other. Now, of course, if you're trying to do certain things, you do want to separate them. There was a supplement years ago with DL-phenylalanine in it to try and spike DL-phenylalanine in the brain. So you had to take it on an empty stomach apart from other amino acids. And that's the only way it would work. So in cases like that, we're trying to get things across the blood-brain barrier, and then hey, you want to separate things out. But you don't need to separate your protein from your fiber in your diet. I could imagine detox does not pull lead out of the powder before we eat it. No, it could if there's actually lead in it, but of course we test everything. But one of the purposes of the detoxolite and all the products aside from Cell Defender is to, first of all, remove competition. So other things in your diet, other things that you're exposed to, it'll remove those heavy metals. So it'll allow you to get better value from the good metals. You're going to get better absorption. So that's what we call a nutritional enabler. Once the zeolite gets in your body, it acts as a shuttling mechanism. So not only does it suck up toxins and heavy metals, the zeolite will absorb a little calcium, a little magnesium, but it doesn't like it. It won't hold on to it. So what happens is it'll pull in some calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, sodium, potassium, whatever, and then it'll go place in the body where there's less of calcium, magnesium, whatever, and it'll let it go. So it functions as a shuttling mechanism to move things around the body so you get better use of your nutrients. So there's all these downstream implications of the detoxification pathway of the zeolite. Did you say meal replacement uses whey? How's that source? Grass-fed, no hormone? Yes. So the whey protein is non-GMO and fully certified organic. So that's no antibiotics, no hormones, and pasture cattle, all that stuff. Grass-fed pasture cattle. There has been the last few years, which puts concern in the use of whey, one being dairy allergy and other regarding sexual contributing development diabetes. Okay, so again, it's not just it's whey proteins. What else is in the product? I can't tell you how many times someone blames an ingredient of the product for just bad manufacturing. I'll give you a great example. You could look up kava right now, and it's going to say kava causes liver problems. It does not. Kava does not cause liver problems. Kava is a natural herb, it's an extract. It's been used for literally thousands of years by the indigenous people of Micronesia, especially the island of Vanuatu. And kava kava has a natural way of calming you down and focusing you. So in those tribes, whenever they had peace talks, whenever they want to sit down and talk to each other, they would drink kava kava tea or even smoke kava, and it was fabulous. So kava came out in a big way in the 90s and early 2000s, and it really helped people. And then suddenly, some people who were taking kava supplements had liver damage, liver failure. So the FDA puts out a report, kava caused liver damage. Well, if kava caused liver damage, then all those people in Micronesia would have liver damage because they take so much of it all the time. So what happened is there was one company with one product that made a bad product that had metabolites and other things in it that caused liver damage. It wasn't the kava. So there's really nothing wrong with kava, but to this day, they'll say that it does this thing. There's no real evidence that simply having whey protein or whey shakes increases risk for diabetes, but if it's a protein shake that has a lot of sugar in it or has other things that can actually increase risk for raising HbA1c or other high glycemic compounds, then that could happen. But it's not really the whey protein. It could be other things in that product. Okay. Dairy allergy is a little different. Understand there's dairy allergies and dairy sensitivities. I am lactose intolerant. That means that my body doesn't make an enzyme called beta galactosidase. So I don't break down lactose well. That's not an allergy. That's a sensitivity because of an enzyme deficiency. So it's a very different thing. An allergy would actually raise histamine and cause an allergic response, which can be dangerous. So there are people that are allergic, that have dairy allergies, and there are people that have dairy sensitivities. The whey itself shouldn't have casein in it. It shouldn't have lactose in it. It's just the whey protein. So if it's a good extract, it shouldn't have any problem with people that have those allergies or sensitivities. Okay. Have you heard of Parent? I think they're trying to say Parent's disease related to mad cow. Parent's disease. I know what mad cow is. Parsons disease? No. Is it Parsons disease? Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about, but I did study bovine spongiform encephalomyelitis, BSE, which causes Jakob-Creutzfeldt syndrome, which we know as mad cow disease. It's a prion disease caused by an infectious self-replicating protein. Just the fact that a self-replicating protein exists is scary. There was the guy that first said that you could have a self-replicating protein. He was laughed out of his first lab, and eventually he won the Nobel Prize for figuring that out. So that's why we're not recommended to eat glands from the cow, like the thyroid or the brain or things like that, because it could have these prions and infectious proteins. But now, for the most part, people look for that. They actually do prion testing on things to make sure it doesn't contain that. Certainly, there's no such thing as prions and whey protein, so we don't see that. And now we understand what to look for. We can test for prion, the existence of prions. And so when's the last time you heard of outbreak of mad cow disease? Because they now we look for it in all the cattle. We make sure that those are pulled out and eliminated. But I don't know. Parents, obviously, I think you decess. I think you meant disease. But if you can tell me, Ralph, you can email me at Rik, R-I-K, at avinihealth.com. If you have something specific, if you know exactly what the name of the disease is, I'm happy to talk about it. I dropped my hydration. Oh, no, there's my chocolate. See, I got all my packets. I got chocolate. I got fiber. This was for the CEO call. I want people to have packets. People should all have their packets. I think that's the last question, Dave. Oh, no, what are the benefits of whey over egg? It's a good question. It's really a lot about availability. I got to tell you, my favorite protein out there now is cricket protein, where they crunch up crickets. But that's a heavy load to lift to convince you guys that cricket protein is good. It is. It's a very healthy protein. Egg protein is considered to be the most complete protein, but it is very expensive. It doesn't mix well when you have to spray dry it as part of the manufacturing. So whey happens to be cost effective for what it is. And remember, I want to use the aminogen protein enzyme. Aminogen enzyme is made to be used with whey protein to be anti-catabolic and make those branched amino acids available. So that's why we chose to use the whey. Okay. And I chose not to use cricket protein.
Thank you. Oh, this has been fantastic. I appreciate you, Rik.
Well, guys, you got to try the meal replacement. It's absolutely delicious, the protein meal replacement. And I got the chocolate here, but you got to try the vanilla. I'm sure we'll be doing some specials, things like that. I'm trying to convince Neil to do a weight management contest. Paul Stowers did a small one. It was incredibly effective. He had people losing weight and following protocols. And so we know our stuff is great. We just have to make sure people know how to utilize
All right. I'm going to go have a shake. Take
it.
care.
Have a great weekend, guys. Thank you.